everybody, welcome to the show. This is Interesting Times. It's our second episode, technically. I'm Gideon Evans.
And I'm Matt Moses. And it is a pleasure to be here with you, Gideon. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, nice to see you, too. I don't think the audience can see us, though. But
they cannot.
I should have yes and just
no, I mean, I don't think that wasn't an SN. Yes and.
Okay, that's
true.
Yeah. But yeah, it's fun to be back, and we continue to learn. I think we used a new theme song, which hopefully was better than last week.
Oh yeah, I'm you know what, I have hope for this one, but I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah.
The jury is out, as they say.
As they do.
The figurative jury, not the literal one.
The figurative jury, not the literal one.
That'd be weird if there was a jury that actually decided what our theme song music was.
It would be weird. When I was a kid, my dad, was a, great. My dad was
sick.
A little bit, yeah.
Oh boy.
Okay. Anyway, my dad, when I was a kid, my dad was a journalist, and he worked at the federal court, and I visited him at the federal court, and there was a trial going on of the Westies, who were these Irish mobsters from Hell's Kitchen. And, it was during deliberations, and I just remember there was this, I guess a mobster's wife with these long nails, sort of sitting in the back of the courtroom, almost like it was a pew, and praying. And it was just kind of dramatic to me as a kid. And then after that, my dad was talking to me about mobsters, and he was like, if you look in their eyes, they're dead inside. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Oh my gosh, I'm 7.
That's wild.
Anyway, you just made me think of that.
Because of the word juries.
Well, we were getting into the jury being out and everything.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And what were they convicted? The Westies?
I was just there. It was just one day, but I think yes. I believe yes.
So that's we're already on the topic of memory, and we didn't even play our clip yet, right?
Oh, that's a great point.
Memory's such a hard thing.
It's such a part of our lives. We're talking about memory this week.
Hang on, my dog. I wonder if my wife is home.
My wife isn't here.
Jill? Hi, I'm recording, so... I'm recording the podcast, so we have to be quiet, okay? Jill just got back from taking my son to the doctor.
All right.
But the doctor appointment isn't till next week, so it's another memory thing.
Oh, gosh.
She didn't remember that. But we do have calendars to help us with those. You did write it down?
True.
I did. I wrote it down for today, and they confirmed.
They confirmed, and then you got there, and they said...
What happened, they asked me to send this chart from the other doctor's office.
Yeah.
And I think I got the wrong, I don't know. It's so not interesting.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
Like you're kind of hitting the bottom of the barrel here.
This is the flavor. This is the flavor of real life. This is a slice of life.
It's like noir. Is that what? No, not noir. It's like, what's the thing, that expression in film where the camera's running?
In media res?
Verite. No.
Verite. Okay.
Right.
I was just thinking I've done that before, where I've forgotten a date or gone early to something, and but I can't remember what it was. So.
Right. Well, we once went to a party a week early accidentally. We showed up at these people's house.
Oh my gosh.
And they were didn't want to say it right away. They were just like, hi, how you doing? And then eventually they were like, oh, by the way, I was like, wow, we're here early. And they were like, yeah, you're not kidding. we were there a week early. Anyway.
What happened? Did you stay longer, or you're like, oh, and just back out the door?
Maybe we stayed a little, but then we were like, because of our fuck up we didn't want to, they probably had plans or something. So I think after a little while, after a very short amount of time, I was like, I don't want to, take up your time.
Did you go back to the party? Did you
just
show up next week?
Oh, I think we did.
Okay,
we did.
That's nice.
Yeah, crazy. And we're not 81 years old.
No, it's just going to get worse, right?
From
or
here,
better. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, it's a good thing to forget.
Absolutely, that's great. Even legally, it can be a problem if you remember too much.
That is true. That's
why Robert Hur, the special investigator, said that Biden shouldn't be prosecuted because he couldn't remember too much. And if he did remember more about where he put it and why he put those documents in those places and didn't return them, then he might have had willful intent.
Right, and I think part of the big point from him too was just that he said he would appear as a well-meaning old man, elderly
right, sympathetic,
person,
right?
Who was sympathetic, who wouldn't. So you'd feel bad, like, oh, of course he doesn't remember.
Right.
Which is, I don't know, it's a pretty wild characterization in my opinion, because it's very common, well, number one, just not to remember, and number two, Biden was saying he didn't remember stuff during this interview with him where he is under the threat of being prosecuted. So the best thing to say a lot of times is to just say you don't remember.
Well, his
right?
lawyer, Biden's lawyer, might have recommended he say that. So he might have remembered, but he was just saying, I don't remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
And another thing that I read is that stress can also help make you have a bad memory. So,
I've read both. I read
really?
that like high intensity events, like a death, which is what this centers on, whether or not Biden remembered when his son died.
The son, right.
Right.
Yeah.
But those kind of like high intensity events like that, very emotional, it can both sear it into your memory and it can, make you forget it. But I think it's also like people will remember certain aspects of it, like where they were when they heard it happened, and how the light was coming in the window and the coffee in their hand, that kind of thing. But maybe a million other things they wouldn't remember, like I don't know, like the date, for example, which is what Biden did remember. The date, he remembered the specific date, May 30th, that happened.
The month and the day he remembered, but then he needed prompting on like the year.
Right. And the thing was, Biden is the one who brought this up to begin with, and he was just like extemporizing, speaking extemporaneously about trying to, what's that called, where you're just see, look, I forgot. It was
like train of thought. It was
right.
He was
right, speaking out loud and just sort of figuring out what you're trying to say. And he was asking, like, what year was that? Was that 2016, 2017? And there somebody chimes in and says 2015. So, and then this doddering old man now, we gotta lock him up.
Right. Well, also the thing about the stress was this was apparently the day that he sat down for these interviews with the special prosecutor was the day and the day after the October 7th attacks in Israel.
Yeah.
So he had just gotten off the phone with like Netanyahu, and I don't necessarily want to get into that stuff, but he must have been like focusing his brain on that situation, and that could also cause things. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, it's a huge hornet's nest, and beyond the tragedy of it, of course, that is going to occupy a big portion of the rest of his term, as we've seen. So I could understand why you're thinking through all the scenarios that could play out.
I want to play this clip. I mean, I think one thing if nothing else, that this Robert Hur, the special prosecutor, should be criticized for. And it's the least of the things he should be criticized for, is that he's tone deaf politically. Like, obviously he can claim that he's not a political figure and he doesn't take politics into account. But I think he should know that if he does focus on this memory thing in his report, that the politicians are going to run with it.
No question. Oh, I think he knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah, well, of course.
Let's talk about it after the clip, but I think this clip kind of demonstrates it. And it's this congressman named Nate Moran. I kind of want to call him Nate Moron, but that's maybe a little too much.
Yeah, calm down, Gideon.
A little too much. I'm getting
Look, Gideon, it's
crazy.
Offensive. All right,
he's a Republican. I know we're trying to be unbiased here, right?
I know.
Anyway, this guy, Representative Moran, he's a Republican from Texas. He jumped on this whole bandwagon of the calling Biden old, and this is just a few days after Biden gave that State of the Union, where he kind of demonstrated that he's pretty lucid and pretty with it for an 81-year-old. So it's a little weird that the Republicans are continuing to try to push this. But this guy Moran really pushes this.
Then again on page 208, he did not remember when he was vice president, and he did not remember even within several years when his son Beau died. You finally make the statement on page 248, quote, "For these jurors, Mr. Biden's apparent lapses and failures in February and April 2017 will likely appear consistent with the diminished capacities and faulty memory he showed." Those were astounding conclusions to me. And as I look through those quotes, I have to say I hearken back to my time before Congress. I was a judge, and one of the things that I oversaw was guardianships. And frankly, when I read your conclusions, red flags began to go up in my mind, because I oversaw hundreds of guardianships back in Texas. And as I saw your conclusions, I began to wonder, what does the D.C. statute say about guardianships, and how do you define an incapacitated individual in Washington, D.C.? And I want to show you this statute, because I presume, are you familiar with the statute at all?
I am not, Congressman.
So I didn't think that you'd probably reviewed that. So let me just read to you some of these, some of the definitions here. An adult whose ability to receive and evaluate information effectively or to communicate decisions is impaired to such an extent that he or she lacks the capacity to manage all or some of his financial resources. That's the first part of the definition of incapacity, an incapacitated individual under the guardianship statute in the District of Columbia. And quite frankly, I see tons of overlap from what you set forth in your testimony, in your written report, and the definition here. The phrases are almost identical.
But this guy Hur must have known when he was putting in these quotes about Biden's memory that people like Representative Moran would take that and run with it. Like, you have to blame her to some degree for not realizing.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing. And I think it was sort of to give himself cover, because he's a Republican. And so to give himself cover with his party, because, ultimately, he needs jobs going forward. Right?
Right. Because he's young.
Right. He's young. They asked him at one point, I forget who asked it, but someone on the questioning side said, would you take a job from a future Trump
they said,
administration?
I remember that too. He said, do you promise not to take a job? And he would not promise that.
Which, honestly, that's reasonable. Like,
it's reasonable, yeah.
Yeah, because what's he going to do? He's going to. Oh no, it's fine. It's because he's going to need a job, but this kind of politicking of having to set yourself up for a job and doing so by issuing an official opinion with that in mind it's not good. But this is the kind of stuff that happens all the time, I guess. I don't know if I was in his shoes. I don't know that I wouldn't do that. I don't know.
If he's in the tank for Trump, this Hur, I
Right.
mean, why wouldn't he say that Biden should be prosecuted? I mean, I guess he's in the tank, but maybe not that much in the tank.
Right. Yeah.
He
Right.
doesn't
No, maybe
wanna
he's
be
wholly
He
not.
doesn't want to be a laughing stock because it's so clear that Biden shouldn't be prosecuted.
100%. I mean, yeah, and maybe he's 100. Like he's not in the tank. Maybe he hates Trump. That's what you got to wonder about so many Republicans, how much they dislike Trump but don't speak up about it. I brought this book up to you before, Why Democracies Die, and a big part of it is often that the politician who is taking power and becoming an authoritarian is his own party doesn't speak out against him, and when they are thwarted, the party comes out and says no, and we're not seeing that.
Right. I feel like a lot of people who are Republicans don't like Trump,
Yeah,
but they don't dislike him enough to
Right.
say something definitive.
yeah. I mean, but they hate Biden and they hate Democrats more, and think they're worse for the country still, I guess.
Yeah. But was saying this stuff about Biden's memory,
Yeah,
there are people who are like, he could have said it in a kind of like less like medical way, like he's not a doctor, he can't really diagnose what his memory is, so he could have just said he didn't really have recall a lot of the time, like was that it was just like bringing up his son's death was kind of mean-spirited. I mean, even though it was Biden who brought up his son.
right. But he put it in the report
Yeah, is that
unnecessarily.
mean? I mean, who wakes up and is like, I'm going to specifically mention this time when this guy couldn't remember when his son died? Like, that's pretty fucked up. Like, isn't there a
You
way
know
to...
what? You're right, because he knew that would be a good headline, and it's cutting, and it's a good takeaway.
Right. He knew that would get publicity. And, I mean, could Merrick Garland, as the person overseeing the report, could he have said, this is too much? Can you scale it back?
I am not sure about that, because I think special counsel is supposed to be independent of the Justice Department to some
Right.
extent. I'm not
Right.
sure though. But I mean, there's big question about whether Garland should have appointed her in the first place, and people are criticizing him for that.
Apparently Hur wasn't the first choice. They were probably looking for someone that was up in age, a little more,
Oh, really?
established, who was like, if they were older, they wouldn't necessarily be ambitious or political beings.
Right. Right.
So there is a benefit to having someone who is already has a career that's on the downhill slope of that parabola.
Right.
I don't
Well,
even know.
that
Is
was
that
the whole.
parabola? Is that a
Well,
parabola?
parabola comes back around, doesn't it? So
Right,
we just
right.
have death and the end of
Right.
your career. But
Right,
they
right.
did that with Mueller, and I don't know that worked out so great. I don't know that he did such a good job. I know that he's still sort of viewed as above partisan politics, and it was reasonable, but it seems like he sort of avoided a lot of avenues he could have gone down for further investigation. But anyway, that's a whole other ball of wax.
Yeah, been there, done that. But while we're talking about memory, I mean, is bad memory something that should disqualify a president? I think memory is such a complicated thing too.
It is, yeah. What
Like
we
it's-
remember.
It's kind of impressive that Biden did remember the month and the day. In a way, that seems more impressive than remembering the year, but maybe not.
I would say so, that he was able to, pinpoint it so specifically and easily. You know what? All of it seems within the realm of normal to me. There's so much I forget, so much I remember. I don't know what differentiates the two. sometimes, you know?
Right, right. Did you ever like do acting where you had to remember like a lot of lines and stuff?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I acted at our high school. A little bit after that as well. But were you involved? Because we had a big theater program at our high school, which
That's
Gideon
true.
and I went to the same high school, but at different times. So, did you act?
I did. I did a lot of plays in high school. Actually,
what
there
were
was
you-
there was one play that in particular I was always okay at remembering lines because you just rehearsed it to death.
Yeah.
There was one play by Eugene Ionesco, you know him?
Yeah.
Absurdist playwright. Rory directed The Bald Soprano.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And I think because it's absurdist and because the lines, they're non sequiturs, where one line doesn't necessarily, someone might be like, what are you having for dinner? And someone would say lightning. You know, it's just like one line doesn't follow the next.
Right,
So it is particularly hard to remember those types of lines. And I remember I had this crazy monologue that was basically just gibberish. It was nonsense. And that is, I think when you're rehearsing with people and the lines are short and one line logically follows to the next,
Right.
it's not that hard. But
Yeah.
if you're just talking gibberish, then it's super hard.
It's super hard. I bet at the same time, no one's going to notice, right? You could just make up nonsense.
That's a good point.
No one's going to call. I mean, I still have
except the estate of Eugene Ionesco.
right, and they
If
do
they
always send
happen
someone.
to be in that to a high school
Right,
production.
they are strict. They are.
Yes.
Ionesco,
Very
on it.
litigious.
Oh man, brutal. Yeah, I've always been really bad actually at memorizing lines, and I was bad at it back then, and it got worse. I just can't. I just wrote memorization. Is not something I am particularly good at, and I had trouble with memorizing the multiplication times tables, and but I guess the thing is, how much does that matter in adult life unless you're an actor? I don't know. I guess
No,
you have to memorize some things, right?
I don't think it. I think also in politics, I think from what I've heard, because a friend of mine works a lot in Congress. Not he doesn't work there, but he meets a lot of congressmen and senators, and I think there are lots of really stupid people that are in our government, and there are lots of smart people.
Yeah.
And I think everybody just hires people to make them look good. So if you have a good person who's running your office,
Yeah.
I mean, they'll prepare you and they'll make you look smart.
Oh, right. If you have
know
good
what I
people
mean?
behind you.
Yeah, and you can ask people questions like, should I bring up this thing about conservatorships, or whatever.
Right.
Or guardianship, sorry.
Yeah, same thing, I think. Yeah, but
Yeah.
you have all these people that can be in your ear, feeding you stuff, and then ultimately, what it really is about, a job like that, is making decisions.
Right.
Although I guess there's many aspects to it, really. But
Yeah.
you have to remember names, certainly, as a politician.
Totally. You have to
I'd be
remember
curious how good Biden is
your,
at that.
who your friends are and who your enemies are.
Right. If you have no facial recognition, you could end up murdering someone who's actually your friend.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. Or going to war with the wrong country.
That's true.
But you do have people around you. But I guess with a nuclear bomb, with the button, I mean, it is possible that if the president just can't remember anything, he could bomb Luxembourg or something.
That would be terrible.
He'd be
Yeah.
like, that's our worst enemy, Luxembourg.
Gosh, you talk about the madness of King George, right? I mean, but I think people took over for him. This is the King of England, right? Didn't they?
Did they? I don't remember. There was that play, right? It became a movie.
It became a movie. I never. Yeah, we don't remember. Who
I don't
knows?
remember if there was something in the monarchy where there's people. I mean, I'm sure there are people surrounding you.
Well, because there is an off ramp that Congress can put into effect to take a president out, saying that they're incapacitated. And
the 25th Amendment.
that's
right?
it. Yeah, right. And so if that was talked about a bunch with Trump.
Yep.
So people
Even
definitely
among
think
his
about
cabinet, I think his
Yeah.
cabinet members
it.
talked
Right?
about
Is it just
that.
about being incapacitated, or is it like this guy's crazy?
Well, it could
Which I
mean
guess is
different things.
incapacitation.
I think it can be crazy. Or if they had a stroke and they're like, they just can't do the job for whatever reason. If they're
Right.
always on drugs, or if they had a stroke, or if they're just like a sociopath. Like
Right.
Donald
Or
Trump.
if they're like on Air Force One and terrorists take control of the plane, and
Right.
they want to, and you're in the underbelly of the plane.
Is that a
and
Harrison Ford?
Yeah,
movie?
Air Force One, and you're killing terrorists. Yeah, oh,
Right.
man. It's a
That was
good one.
good.
Well, and then there's so now with AI, is our brain going to be even less acute, or is it going to be freed up to think about other things? I mean, it's the same thing with a calculator, right? You think about like high level mathematics, high level people that do that. It's not like calculators have made them worse, right?
Right.
And lazy. It's only helped them, I would assume, especially when you're dealing. Obviously, they would only use it for more complicated math. I would think all mathematicians have the times tables memorized. Now, you know what? Do they though? I'm curious. What do you think? There's any mathematician out there who's bad at some like lower level math, but good, but very good at the larger, thoughtful,
They
philosophical.
Did, I remember people talking about Oppenheimer.
Oh, okay.
To get way onto another topic.
Let's do it.
Yeah, well, I do believe, and I know very little about him other than the fact that I saw Oppenheimer. I also was recently in Vegas, and we went to the Atomic Museum there.
Oh,
so
cool.
there was a little more about Oppenheimer, but I didn't read the book that the movie was based on. So
Yeah.
I know very little, but I do think one thing about Oppenheimer is that he wasn't really a nuts and bolts kind of like where he would crunch the numbers, where he knew the minutia of the little stuff like you're
Right.
talking about, but he was able. I think he's actually the personification of what you're talking about, where he just could put things together, where he could hear different scientists say different things and then come to the logical conclusion based
that's
on
really-
but he didn't
That's
have
interesting.
those skills. Like he wasn't like the best.
Right, higher level
mind.
thinking.
Yeah.
Well, it's also true of Einstein, actually. Apparently, he was not great at math. I don't think he was at the level of not being able to know the times tables. I think he was still,
Right.
very good, but he would go to mathematician friends and get them to sort of figure out the math of his idea, which is so wild to me, just that he would theorize about this stuff. Anyway.
Well, I think for every job, when you have a high level job, you're always going to be in a position where you have to realize, here's what I know and here's what I don't know. And I think, I remember in the Oscars the other day, they were talking about the guy that directed American Fiction, and it was his first film. And they were like, he did an amazing job writing the movie, and this was his first director gig, but he knew what he knew, and he knew for what he didn't know, he surrounded himself with some smart people. And I think, I don't know if it's fair to compare him to Biden or Oppenheimer, but that's what people who are good leaders do. They just like surround themselves with people who know the shit.
I mean, it's arguable that that's the number one important trait of leadership, is being able to hire the right people. Yeah,
Definitely. And you're like secure enough with your own ego and your own competence to be able to put people around you that know more than you. Right. No, anyway, I just realized that I wanted to do this whole thing where we did a memory test for one another.
Oh, okay.
And then I totally forgot to do it, so that proves that my memory isn't very good. I did write it down, but then
Well, maybe it's good to have a bad memory sometimes, right? Because you were focused on the thing in front of you rather than thinking about something else. I mean, Gideon and I both have backgrounds in improv at the UCB Theater in New York, and one of their credo is "don't think," right? So that sort of means, you're not remembering the past; you're just in the moment.
but you're kind of drawing from a fountain of stuff from your past to kind of make up new stuff, right?
That is true. It's like but it's what comes, kind of, rather than making your brain work.
True.
Yeah.
True.
I was reading that they kind of think about memory in much the same way we think about a computer's memory, and that memory can break down and have problems at all these different stages of the process, like when you're sort of like writing it to the disk, and then when you're putting it into the file folder, and then when you're filing it away elsewhere, and then it staying there and not degrading into a bunch of unintelligible zeros and ones. Anyway, that it's just kind of fascinating that how, like computers, we see everything.
Definitely. And I guess, maybe when you age, some of our circuitry and our means for memory, our means for remembering things kind of break down and slow down.
Right, like disk fragmentation, which you don't have to deal with that as much. Do you remember, got to defrag this disk?
I do remember that. That was weird. And I never knew why you had to defragment the...
Yeah, I guess it's because you
it was
delete
to clear
stuff.
up space, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's all these little holes within it.
It was always so fun to watch the visualization of the defragmentation.
It was.
Did you do that? Yeah.
I did. Yeah. I mean, it had that same kind of, you watch like pimple popping videos or something.
Right.
Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Cleanliness.
Yeah. Well, it's satisfying.
Satisfying.
There are all these Instagram sites called like satisfying sites where they like peel fruit in a really like interesting way, and it feels kind of good because the skin of the fruit comes off. Yeah. And it's just somehow it makes your brain feel good.
Why is that? Like
Isn't that weird?
Evolutionarily implanted with this. Yeah.
My brother got into this thing. I don't even know why. Where you're like, there's a way to shave down like horse hooves to make them look pretty when they get all muddy and weird. Yeah. And that's like one of those things too, where you watch it and it looks so good at the end that you just... And I didn't really like it as much as he did, but by the end it is kind of amazing that you start with this really like weathered hoof with like mud on it, and then by the time the expert guy kind of shaves it down, it looks so good. Yeah,
I've always been horrified by that because it just feels like they're hurting the horse, because it feels so much like part of their leg. And that they're just cutting off pieces of... I mean, it's not. I guess it's the same as cutting someone's nails, Yeah. Have you ever watched the ones where they, find this sheep that has been roaming the hills for months, and it has this huge ball of wool around it, and they shave it? Yeah. That feels good.
I could see that.
It's good. Yeah, it's real dirty, and you just feel like, that sheep must feel great.
Like taking off a big, dirty sweater. With like dung on it.
Oh God! What happened to you?
Oh my God!
Yeah. Are you wearing sweaters these days?
No, today's like 67 degrees.
Oh,
that's
gorgeous.
cold for LA where you are. But...
no, I mean that's sort of. I think that's what it is right now. But no. So it's cold for. I don't know. Never. That wouldn't be cold, I don't think.
No. So So is there a conclusion to the memory thing? Have we solved this issue? Are we okay with the president who may not have the best memory?
I mean, are we okay with ourselves?
Well, it depends on the day, honestly.
Ugh, yeah.
Are you? I guess I'm
Good
okay.
point. No, good point. You know what? We can't be president
Why?
because we have faulty memories. I mean, there's so many things during this episode where it's like,
That's
I don't
true.
remember that. What is this? I'm
I
trying to
don't even
retrieve
remember
it.
the name of the Irish criminals that you brought up like
Oh, okay.
30 minutes ago.
What do you remember?
Wild
Can you
Boys? Is
that's
it the Wild
okay.
Boys? Was that close?
I mean,
See, this is like a non-scientific study, but like
yeah.
I should be able to remember.
I wouldn't say it's close, but there's one aspect to
the
Wild
Woolies,
Boys. You get
the
that's,
Woolies,
That's closer.
the
and
Woodies. No, I don't want to say that word. It's a dirty word.
Oh my gosh!
No gang would want to be called that.
Probably not.
The Westies.
Yeah, you did it.
I did.
You
it.
got
Got
there.
there.
Yeah, there you go. So Gideon, I really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Yeah, me too. Me too. This has been really interesting. I think we explored some wild stuff, and we talked about Hopefully it'll make sense. Hopefully we there's some logic in what we.
We're
talked
getting
about.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can try to cut some stuff out that's just weird.
Please,
Doesn't.
thank you.
I mean, although weird can be good, but
Oh yeah. You keep the weird, just the
cool.
nonsensical, I guess, right?
And I hope you feel better.
Thank you. Yeah. Oof. Yeah. Thank you very much. I hope you have an interesting week.
Exactly.
No, I don't
Exactly.
wish that for you. I hope you have a real boring one, and it's lovely.
Nothing unpleasant happening.
Oh, of course. Don't wish that at all.
All right, I'm going to turn off the record button. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.